right, Doug, can you tell me about how you got into motorsports?
Sure. Yeah, growing up, my dad, Chet Herbert, was involved in racing, and he was in the camshaft business. One of the start guys of the hot rodding world down in Southern California, and so I was involved in racing motorsports, and I started racing bicycles, and then went to motorcycles, and we raced boats for a while, and we figured out, okay, boats are pretty dangerous, and then we got into by the time I was 16, I had my 16th birthday at the DMV to get my driver's license, and off I went. I was involved. I'd take my car that I drove every day. I had a 70 Camaro with a big block, and take it to the drag strip, and that was kind of how I got started, and then wanted to go faster and faster and faster, and so dragsters was the way to go. You want to go fast, you got to have a dragster.
That's awesome. You have quite the list of accomplishments. Is there one that stands out to you, like as your favorite accomplishment, like on track?
Oh boy, on track, I don't know. Being the first to go over 300 miles an hour in NHRA competition, pretty cool. Bernstein broke 300 in a qualifying run. I was the first to go 300 actually in eliminations run. Was also the first to go 300 at Pomona. Wally Parks was there. Was pretty neat. Wally Parks, the founder of the NHRA, came over to me afterwards. He goes, "Doug, that was so cool. That's the first 300 mile an hour run I ever saw." So that, to have Wally Parks be so proud of that, and me being there, that was a pretty big moment actually in my career. I would say that 300 mile an hour run.
Whenever you make a run like that, do you get out thinking, "Oh man, that felt like I did something different," or do you think, "Oh, it just feels like any other run I've done"?
Well, that one was really special. That was 1993. So Pomona, the fairgrounds, LA County Raceway, whatever they call it, Pomona Raceway, they had probably 50 to 60,000 seats in there. So as I was slowing down from making the run, the engine's winding down, I could hear the crowd roaring, and I knew that I'd won. I was racing Mike Dunn, so I knew I'd beat Mike. I didn't know. I knew we ran pretty good, but I didn't know. But then when I heard the crowd roaring, I'm like, okay, that was pretty good. And then when I'm down there, I pulled around the corner and I had Steve Evans down there giving me three fingers going like this. I was like, three, not 3 seconds, must be 300. And so pretty awesome. Yeah, that was pretty cool. So I knew that it was good because I could hear the crowd.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the bike that's behind you?
This bike is really special. It's called the Beast. My dad actually rode this bike on the street back in the 40s, Southern California, and he was kind of like, the terror of the streets back in the, late 40s after the war. My dad, in 1948, he got polio, so he couldn't ride the bike anymore. He spent about 6 months in an iron lung and with the polio. And getting out of the iron lung, he was, trying to kind of figure out what to do. A buddy of his says, "Hey, let's take the Beast out. They're having races out at the airport this weekend. Let's go out there and run the bike." My dad thought, "You know what? That sounds like a lot of fun." So he got one of his buddies to ride the bike. They went out to Santa Ana Airport. Now currently is John Wayne Airport, Santa Ana, California. That was where they held the first sanctioned drag race in 1949. My dad took the bike out there and they won the race. Not just beat the bikes, but that was beat the cars, beat everything. That was top fuel. They called it top eliminator back then. And so you would race against whatever pulled up in the other lane and have eliminations until the two fastest cars or vehicles would run in the final. And the Beast was the fastest. I mean, it was something. My dad had heard about the Germans using nitromethane during World War II in some of their fighter planes, and so he thought, I want to get some of that. That'll work pretty good in my motorcycle. So was one of the first vehicles to run nitromethane. And he actually, for the day, it was pretty advanced. Some of the things that he did on the bike to make it run, ran 130 miles an hour in the quarter mile in the 40s, which was pretty amazing, with a little tire that's only 3 inches wide. I mean, no helmet. The guy's wearing, glasses and a t-shirt going 130 miles an hour. It's just, it's amazing, what all these pioneers in racing did back in the day. And they made use of what they had to get the most out of what they had. And that was really probably the story of my dad with the Beast. During about the first 3 years of drag racing, the motorcycles were actually faster than the cars until the tires started coming around, and the engines on the cars could make a little more power. They came out with a Hemi engine, stuff like that. So the cars started beating the motorcycles in the early 50s. But for the first couple of years, the motorcycles were actually quicker and faster than the cars.
Wow. Your program Brakes has made a huge impact on drivers. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Sure. Hey, I'm going to go back to one other thing real quick too. So there's a article sitting over here by the bike, and the lead of the article is Drag King of Them All. So that was the bike, was actually the drag king of them all. It was it. I mean, that was the big daddy of drag racing. So pretty neat. And actually talking to Big Daddy Don Garlitz a few years ago about the motorcycle, he said, Doug, I got to tell you, that is the most famous motorcycle in drag racing history. So pretty cool. Pretty neat that it's able to be here. Don Miller found out that it was in my garage, and he goes, Doug, that's way too cool to have in your garage. Please let us take that over and have it, displayed in the museum. So that's why the bike's here is through my relationship with Don and being friends with him for so long, and pretty neat. So to answer your next question, let's see. So Brakes. So Brakes is an acronym for Be Responsible and Keep Everyone Safe. I started that program back in 2008. My two boys, John and James, were killed in a car crash right down here in Cornelius, North Carolina, going too fast, and being reckless. Probably nothing that any of us teenagers didn't do when we were 17 years old. It ended bad. We lost both the boys in the car crash, and I decided at that point, cars are something that I've always loved my whole life, right? And I love driving cars. I love working on cars. I love everything about cars. My boys dying in a car crash, I thought, okay, I've got the ability to do something here and try and make a difference in other teenagers' lives, other families' lives, right? Their child dies in a car crash, it affects a lot more people. Everybody's affected. The school's affected. Everybody at their church, their family, obviously hugely affected. So I decided I wanted to do this driver training program to train these teenagers about some of the responsibility of driving a car, right? They're getting behind the wheel of a 3,000 or 4,000 pound vehicle that's deadly if it's not operated properly. So we started the Brakes program here in Charlotte. The Smith family let us use the Charlotte Motor Speedway. We had the first Brakes class in 2008. Trained about 50 teenagers in 2008, and I thought, wow, that was great. We did a great job. We trained these 50 kids. And then I had parents call me, hey, when are you going to do that again? I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. It was kind of a, that was kind of my therapy, we're bringing my boys' friends out and teaching them about some safe driving. And so the next year we trained about 100 kids, and then it just kind of snowballed. Now we're over 150,000 all around the country. It's amazing. We actually work with the University of North Carolina to do studies for us, and they did a 5-year study that actually determined these teenagers that we've trained are over 64% less likely to be involved in a car crash than teenagers that don't go through the Brakes program training. So it's amazing. I think my boys are helping save other lives. I'm just happy that it's been such an incredible thing that we're able to change a lot of lives and do a lot of good in the world, really, right? And help a lot of families from experiencing that grief that I don't want anybody else to have of losing a child.
That's awesome. To wrap this up, do you have a favorite NHRA paint scheme?
Oh man, yeah, absolutely. In 2004, I can't remember. I think we ran maybe 2004, 2005. We did these Dougzilla paint schemes, and they were just cool. Action did all the. We did city specific. So when we raced in Indy, we had an Indianapolis car that had like a Circle City on it, and then we raced in Sonoma. We had like wine leaves on the car. It was a really cool series of cars. There were Dougzilla cars that we did with Snap-on Tools, was a great partner of mine for a long time, and we just had a lot of fun with those cars. And Action Performance did a bunch of die casts, so had a really good time with those Dougzilla cars. That was probably my favorite cars that we had, and we ended up winning the race at Chicago, and we had the Chicago Chi-Town special edition car, and it was just pretty neat. That was a pretty cool series of cars, and those paint jobs were pretty neat.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.